Let's get started with this panel. You've heard some very good news, and I can assure you that over the next 40 minutes or so, you're going to get even better news. Because when you look at what Spanish companies are doing abroad, you actually get very excited about the prospects and the potential of the Spanish economy. Just 20 years ago or so, if anybody wrote a book about the Spanish multinational firm, and you went to a bookstore, the place to find it would be in the fiction section together with novels. But today, it is actually a very important phenomenon. We have 4 exceptional panelists here with me, and I'm going to start by asking them a few questions, and then we will turn it over to the audience. So first, I would like to ask Javier Fernández Cid, who is the international CEO for Mapfre, which, as you know, is the largest non-life insurance company in Latin America, and of course the largest insurance company in Spain. Your company has grown to become a member of the Global Fortune 500. You bill more than 25 billion euros in terms of insurance policies every year. So the first question is very easy. How come that the Spanish economy and the European economy has been having a lot of trouble over the last few years, but your company has grown very, very fast?
Thank you. Allow me first to thank the Chamber, the U.S.-Spain Chamber of Commerce, for this opportunity. Yes, Mapfre has done well, weathered well the storm in these years. We have to think that Mapfre was already the leading insurer in the country, and it saw clearly that it had to become an international player. Nowadays, 72% of our revenues are coming from outside markets, so that's part of the success. We saw clearly that we had to diversify geographically, and now we are present in 47 countries, of which 23 with a subsidiary in insurance, and of course the U.S. is one of them. Second reason is that we have diversified a lot our product diversification, lines of business. We are in all lines of insurance products, from life, non-life, health, pension, reinsurance, assistance, really in all aspects. And third, we are also conscious that the segmentation of clients is very important to serve not only the individuals and the families, but also the corporate clients, and be present in the global market which has been created. Now we think that we are insuring, for example, in Spain, 32 out of 35 IBEX listed companies. So we are able to follow those multinationals wherever they operate. To finalize with this explanation, I think that not only we have to be ready in terms of diversification of geographies and products, but also the structure of the group has recognized the value of having a strong. Not only is it important to have the regional structure, but also to have a strong corporate vocation and presence. We have, a strong will to innovate, to become a global player, an insurer of trust, and that is, I think, the keys of the success of Mapfre.
And so just a few years ago, you actually made a very important acquisition here in the U.S. You purchased a insurance company based in Massachusetts, correct? So what was the logic behind that, and how does that help you in terms of profitability and financial results?
Well, yes, correct. We made in 2008 a very important investment, investing in the Commerce Insurance Group in Massachusetts. But prior to that, we had been present in Florida. We had been present in assistance services, and also we had a reinsurance subsidiary in New Jersey. All that formed part of our knowledge of what the market was. When we made the investment in Commerce, since then we have grown very much. Commerce is Mapfre-U.S. now. It is the leading motor and home insurance player in Massachusetts, but growing a lot outside Massachusetts. We have a presence in this state through Mafre New York in Long Island, and we have 4 other subsidiaries in the country. We have diversified products and lines of business. We are about to enter new states like Pennsylvania. We enter new lines of business like life insurance, and we have an ambitious plan to grow in the market. No? All in all, Mafre in the U.S. and in the North American region, which for us includes our subsidiary in Puerto Rico, Canada, and all our operations of assistance, insurance, and other business. We employ approximately 4,500 people for a turnover of around 2.9 billion US dollars and a gross profit last year of around 276 million. So we are deeply into this market. And I would finally say that we have seen that this country is a very nice country to invest. There's lovely and wonderful professionals, very professionals, qualified people, and the right market to invest and to continue doing business. That would be.
Thank you very much. You persuaded me to switch to Mafre now here in the United States. I would like now to turn to our second guest here on the panel, Antonio Jardén, who is the chairman, meaning the chairman of the board, presidente, right, of Enagas. And Enagas, as you know, is a company that has a very strong footprint in Spain with just over 10,000 kilometers of pipelines, gas pipelines, and 5 liquefied natural gas terminals. And the first question is, well, Enagas up until now has primarily focused in the Spanish market, although it has some presence abroad. But your plans are to actually accelerate your growth outside of Spain. Why at this time?
Well, certainly, we invest a lot of money in the Spanish market, 5 billion in 7 years. Right now, the maturity of the natural gas network is very high. Then we decided, in order to maintain the growth of the company, or certain growth, and at the same time to remunerate our shareholders, to take advantage of our skills in regasification. Remember that Enagas is the bigger European company from the point of view of regasification facilities. We are operating a very, very complex network with a lot of renewable. Then we think we have certain degree of experience, and it could be interesting for our shareholders and for the company as a whole to take advantage of this experience. And we are replicating, if it is possible to say this, our activities in a similar markets with a high level of growth, economic growth, then more important from the point of view of use of energy, especially the natural gas. And the moment, well, Europe, not only Spain, Europe is a very mature market from the point of view of natural gas and energy, but at the same time, the International Energy Agency is talking about the golden age for natural gas as a bridge between the old model of fossil fuel and the new model about renewable. Then we think there is plenty of opportunities, perhaps not especially in Europe, but in general in America, Asia, and Africa. This is the reason for invest in these countries right now. No?
So a little bit more than 70% of the equity of Enagas is right now owned by international investors. Yeah. And much of that is actually US investors. So how exactly do you explain to them that now you want to go global?
Well, at the beginning of the crisis, before the crisis, the majority of our investors were Spanish investors, perhaps only 40% of foreign investors. As a consequence of the crisis, a lot of the Spanish investors had to, well, sell the shares by different reasons, and we were capable to attract the interest despite the difficult situation of Spain at this moment. And right now we have 75–80% of foreign investors, and the majority of them are in the United States, Boston, Chicago, New York, California. And well, we convinced them that certainly at the beginning, the company like Enagas or companies like Enagas are very stable companies in a regulated sector, but at the same time with a certain capacity of growth. At the moment of the growth of the company is really near 1 or 2% only every year. I think in order to increase the value for the shareholders, a certain growth, especially focus on our core business, could be a good opportunity. I think they understood very well, and we managed to talk to them that we are in a very, very rigorous framework. I mean, we are not diversifying our investments, but investing in our core capacities. We are requiring better returns that we have in Spain. We are not a financial investor, but an investor with presence of the board of directors, with our experience. In general, we prefer to have minority stakes with local partners or big international companies, and at the same time, we are separating the risk of the monies, euro and dollar. Right now, all our foreign investments, we are receiving revenues in dollars, our debt is in dollars, and we are maintaining a good equilibrium between the two things. As a consequence of this, in 2 years and 3 years, perhaps 10% of our assets are outside Spain, and perhaps the net income right now is from 0 to 6% of the total revenues of the company, net income.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So far, we've seen 2 cases of companies in the financial sector / insurance, and then the second one in gas, transportation, and wholesale distribution. And our third example comes from infrastructure, which was mentioned earlier by previous speakers. And we have with us Jordi Graels, who is the president of Abertis USA. It's impossible these days to travel around the world, use airports or toll highways, and not use one that has been either built or is currently being operated by a Spanish company. So one always wonders, people wonder, what is it that a company such as Abertis possesses by way of capabilities or competitive strengths that enables it to compete across so many foreign markets?
Well, does it work?
Yeah.
It's been a long road. We started back in the 60s with one concession in Spain. You know, the concessions are heavily capital intensive at the beginning. Typically, there's a period where we don't make money. There's almost 10 years generally, and then at some point, this becomes a cash cow. So once we did the first concession, the second concession, we started to reinvest these monies that we produced at some point after a few years in other concessions that made other startups. And then when we realized that Spain was, we were reaching our limits there, we started to think, that was late in 2000, year 2000, we started to think of other countries. We started to be in Argentina, in Chile, and so on and so forth. So this is the way we have created, a network of 10 countries where we have, many concessions in this regard. And we realized that we have to be global at some point. We have to become international. Now we operate only 1/3 of our toll roads in Spain, another third in France, and another third elsewhere. I bet in, let's say, 10 years' time, we're going to be operating 1/3 of our toll roads in the United States, 1/3 in Europe, and 1/3 elsewhere. And the keys for this are probably focusing on highly developed countries where there are, stable frameworks, or the legal feasibility of the countries is high, as Europe, as the United States, as some countries in Latin America as well. And then we will go to other endeavors elsewhere in Asia, probably. We are just about to we're also going to go to Australia at some point. So we're becoming a powerhouse. This is a typical capitalist accumulation business story. We start with one concession, then 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on and so forth. This is then we have a lot of ability to invest our own resources together with leveraging. So this is the secret. This is the business, and we're becoming global very quickly.
So some toll roads make money, and some toll roads don't make any money. How do you make a money-losing toll road make money?
Well, all toll roads don't make money at the beginning. That's what I said before. In the first years, you have a high investment associated with the concession contract, and the traffic has not ramped up yet. There's a growth. This is a long-term business. Typically, a concession is 30, 40, 50, or even more years. So in the first 10, 15 years, you may make no money. That's why we have sometimes some problems with the yearly, cycle. Our cycle is longer, much longer. So if you say, well, this road does not make money, well, maybe you're focusing on a very short-term period and without seeing what's going on ahead. Of course, some roads don't make money because they are ill-conceived, but I bet we haven't done any of them. We all of our toll roads make money or will make money.
Excellent, thank you very much. And last but not least, we have Mónica de Oriol, who is the president of the Círculo de Empresarios, the business roundtable of Spain. She's also a seasoned business executive and independent board member of several companies. And I guess I have a couple of questions for you, Mónica. And the first one is, we're already seeing, as Ángel Ubide told us, the very first solid signs of recovery in the Spanish economy. So what is it, in your opinion, that Spanish companies should do to capitalize, to ride the wave of the incipient economic recovery?
I think we went through the metrics, and we have had a lot of metrics, so we should go into what's the underlying trend of these metrics. Why has all this revolution that we're seeing with these 3 examples happened? And what I think is that the hardware is what we see. What's the software underneath? What's the mindset? And I think Antonio was talking about they're starting to think going out. And Jordi was saying 10 years ago. And you were saying how many years ago?
30.
30. This is what was new for the big companies. The trend now is that small and medium companies are reaching out, which is a novelty. And this is the underlying mindset that has changed. The local market is not only sad or depressed, but the outside market is so much more attractive. And this is what has changed in the way all businessmen are conducting their businesses, is that the world is there, which is completely new. I mean, you go to Spain, and we're all here in the panel Spaniards. Just think of 20 years ago. Our horizon was not even Europe. Only those who were pioneering were starting to go to Europe. And now everybody, I mean, you touch the youth, those under 35, those who are in this dual market, where we have those who are really out of the market and those new who are in the market, and they're really looking ahead. So cultural change, mindset change, software change, which means we're all looking outside. So this is a very slow maturing situation, because the big companies are so evident and so visible. But all those middle companies who are invisible but have names are becoming leaders in many of their sectors. And these companies are not on show, but they're there. And they are the authors of this export miracle that was being described by you in the charts. And because it's really not the big companies who were already in the outside market, but the medium companies who have produced this export-oriented, and this, I think it's 38% we are now as an open economy. And the growth relative, I think we're the second growth rate in exports in the world after China in the past 6 years. And so who has been driving this miracle? Medium companies. And that is the real change of the new economy in Spain.
Excellent. And then just before we ask the audience, see if they have any questions, another quick question for you, Monica, which is, what do you believe the European Union should do in order to help accelerate this process of adjustment to the crisis?
Well, I think we need a vision, and we need a vision, and we need leaders. We don't see many leaders around, and that means that do we really want to have a strong Europe, or are we all becoming Eurosceptics? So there are many things to work on that. Mostly, if we take account of what the world is, and in Europe there are many countries that have been looking inward and thinking we were still living on our past for a decade mostly. That's when leaders disappear in Europe. Is that competitiveness has to drive Europe into thinking that the market needs to be big, and we still, we have made a long process and we have improved enormously in some terms, but we don't have one digital market, we don't have one energy market, we don't have one transportation market, and we don't have a financial market. So we're still not leveraging on our 400 million people and the 400 million market. And that means that, and there's just a good survey done recently, and if we manage to intensify these four transport, energy, finance, and digital, we could grow 6% of the added GDP in Europe. And it's because we still have barriers, and local governments, regional governments, national governments, I don't know how far we think of Europe, who are still preventing other players to come in. So the trend in Europe is, until fairly recently, it was business people who were preventing the pace towards more market. Because local businessmen, big companies, were protecting statu quo, protecting their share in their local market and preventing. So we still have those, and I don't want to mention any, but we have special country very near ourselves who are still blocking entries of other companies. And politicians were driving the pace into more market. Well, what I see now is that it's business people who are pushing for more market. And we have to persuade politicians who tend, unfortunately, to over-regulate and to neglect the bounties of a stronger market.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sure the audience will appreciate that, like the Spanish economy, we have improved our productivity as we go from one panel to another. We're conveying a lot of content in less time, okay, as we move forward. But we have maybe time for 4 questions addressed to just one of the panelists. I'm going to be draconian in this respect, so you have to ask a very concise question. Please identify yourselves and address your question to only one of the panelists. And we're going to do just one question, for each, and then we're going to take a coffee break. Your Excellency.
Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about the difficulty doing business in Spain, the improving climate, but still, the United States isn't necessarily a piece of cake. So either Jordi or Javier, you can decide, what are the challenges and difficulties and hurdles of doing business in the United States?
We can share our time. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I mentioned that we were very satisfied with our presence in the U.S. with nearly 500 employees, about 5,000 employees. But perhaps to be brave and to respond to the question, we are part of a multinational group that is determined to become a global project. That means that those 5,000 employees have a challenge in front of them if they want to join our group. And there we find the questions of mobility, we find questions of multilingualism or lack of. And that's just to mention, let's say, something that can be improved. Together with that, I say that mostly we find very good professionals It is also true, very adapted to the reality of the U.S. insurance market, which as you know, is not federally supervised, is state controlled, which means that you have to deal with 50 states when it comes to have licenses to operate in Arizona or in New Mexico.
Harder than dealing with 13 regions, right?
Yes, yes, okay. But just to mention that, but all in all, very positive, very high-tech approach, very professionals. But we need them in our international global effort if they want to join our multi.
No, one down, 3 more to go. So
We were going. No.
now we need
said we were
no, just one question because we are pressed with time. I'm going to be very forceful here. So now you can ask a question to one of the remaining 3 panelists.
It becomes so tough, nobody's going to put it.
Yes, there in the middle of the room, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Estrella. I'm originally from Barcelona, living in New York for 20 years, and working at Royal Bank of Canada as financial advisor. My question is for Mr. Yarden. What do you think, or is there anything being done in Spain regarding how expensive it is for any international companies to go and produce in our country due to the expensive energy? Is anything done? Any ideas?
The expensive energy
Yes.
in Spain. Well, really, the price of the electricity in Spain right now could be higher than in the average of the European Union, but not the price of the natural gas. In Spain, natural gas is a very liberalized market with 90%, 95% of the total volume of natural gas in Spain is in the free market, and we have more or less the average prices of the European Union. Certainly higher than in the United States, but the United States, you have the very good idea to work on the shale gas. Then right now in the world we have more or less 3 zones of prices. United States, very cheap, European at a mid-level, and very, very expensive in the Far East, Japan, Korea. Then from this point of view, natural gas in Spain is not especially an expensive energy market, I assure you. Different thing is electricity with all the problems linked to the renewable, all this stuff, and it could take for me 10 minutes to talk about this. And Ambassador knows very well the problems of renewables, but it's not the case of the natural gas. Perhaps, I am finishing, because we have a lot of regasification plants, then we are not linked to one supplier, for example, Russia or Algeria, but we are linked to many, many suppliers. We are receiving gas from Qatar, Trinidad, Tobago, Peru. Then from this point of view, at least Spain is not in a bad situation, on the contrary. And this is our experience as a company. This is the commercial part of the answer.
We have time for 2 more questions. Yes, here in the middle.
My name is Eugenia.
Wait for the microphone
Okay.
for a second so that people can hear you. Thank you.
I'm Eugenia Vieto, the Director General of ESADE in Barcelona and Madrid. My question is to Mónica de Oriol. Spain has not been a very entrepreneurial country traditionally, and I would like to know, I have the feeling that things are changing in that field. I would like to know your opinion on that.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and we share the feeling. And I agree with the trend. As I was saying before, the fact that we have medium companies, SMEs, that are growing and that are export-oriented from birth is a symptom, well, it's a consequence of the change in mindset. Schools like yours have done a lot into providing and promoting entrepreneurship. And there's this this monitor of entrepreneurship that's going on, which is proving that there's a change in the young people. And the Círculo de Empresarios, together with Círculo de Economía and the Basque, and we presented it publicly about 2 months ago, a document on a survey. And for the first, we were really surprised with the results because we never expected to have. And the question, I would say, and this is why I want to choose this because it's even more long term. Many questions were, and it was the first survey on entrepreneurship. No, the image of the business community in Spain. No, and you know, we all think that we're all, if you go to the press, it's always the bad cases, those are corrupt, they don't talk about the good success stories, and so we were expecting a very bad result. And to make a long story short, when you ask parents what do they want their children to become in their career life, professional life, 53% said entrepreneurs. I mean, that was a big surprise. We never expected those results because, as we all know, mostly, in Spain, everybody dreamt of being a civil servant because security in the job was more important than a career, and we have been branded as a risk-averted society, culturally very conservative. And this survey proves that things have really changed. And well, in your school, and probably another index that gives us how the things are changing is the number of students who sign in for business administration studies, not in the private schools, which are so prestigious as ESADE, because the crisis has hit the private schools. But when you go to public schools, to free schools, I mean, to the state universities, the number of students signing in for this kind is enormous, which means business doesn't sound toxic anymore. It's like it's even becoming aspirational.
Absolutely. And we have time for one last question for Jordi Graels about infrastructure, toll roads, Abertis.
I may answer the ambassador's questions.
No, if not, I have a question actually for you,
All right.
but it's a hard one.
Good.
You don't want his answer to the
So
previous question.
let me give you the let me ask you the question. So a few months ago, I was having dinner with Bill Ford, the executive chairman of the Ford Motor Company, and he said that the future is the self-driving car. So are you or companies in your industry thinking about how the incorporation of the Google car, right? How that's going to potentially change your business? We're talking here about something that could potentially change the way we drive, and it could potentially change the infrastructure that is needed in order to drive. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we're aware of what's going on this regard, and partly we are already there because the toll collection is already made by all electronic devices at this point. Actually, in Europe, they use a protocol which is 5.8 gigahertz, which is very similar to the 5.9 gigahertz that is here in the United States, where that's a little bit wider, and it includes the ability for the car to be guided from the road as well, with the same protocol, same device. So we are quite close to that, and we are bet on that, because at some point we will install these devices along the road, and we'll facilitate that thing. Of course, we will charge for that.
Excellent. Well, let me give you the really good news about this panel. The really good news is that we have here 3 companies, and we have the president of one of the most important, if not the most important, business association in Spain. But we could have had 200 others on this panel. That's the good news, right? These companies are fantastic. They're doing great things. But of course, there's a very long list of Spanish companies that could have been represented on this panel. So please join me in thanking our 4 invited guests.